we're going to go to Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, a recent Gallup poll found that support for LGBTQ rights has surged since the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. However, even with this record support by the American people, members of the LGBTQ community continue to face unnecessary barriers and obstacles. Our country is currently dealing with the combined effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and a fight for equity and justice across the board. Often ignored, LGBTQ individuals who also come from minority communities face the unique challenges of combating multiple forms of discrimination at once. So I have a question for Dr. Guffey. In your written testimony, you mentioned that your child, Brian, lived a conflictual reality as a youth. Could you discuss any unique challenges Brian has faced being both Black and gay? That's my first question.
Thank you for that question. I think anyone that has that multiple identity deals with the intersection of them. It's like a layered effect. And so you can never separate them. You deal with them all the time. And so it's like a double, I don't want to say burden, it's like a double discrimination. And so while some folks may say, we have come to a place where we understand and are dealing with issues of race, but the trans thing, we can't accept that. And like Mr. David said, he can walk in and have some rights as a Black person, but as a maybe a gay person or a trans person, that's a totally different story. And so there's still in place that conflict of what rights do you have when. And so I think that's what I would say, still having to deal with both realities and two levels of two conflicting rights, still not equal, still not, still discrimination in this country. Yeah. And the Equality Act would be another step forward, an important step forward for this country and for Brian.
Thank you. Doctor, I have another question for you as well. This one on the topic of freedom of religion, and it's something that you touched on in your opening statement as well. You know, colleagues, freedom of religion is one of our nation's most sacred and fundamental values. In 1993, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was passed with bipartisan support and was intended to limit the federal government's ability to substantially burden people's exercise of religion. However, the Act's scope has been expanded over time, and the law has been weaponized to weaken non-discrimination protections. Though the opponents of the Equality Act falsely claim otherwise, the Equality Act will not repeal, nor will it undermine the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It actually expands protections against the discrimination toward religious and racial minorities. Additionally, the bill has the support of over 100 religious groups across the country. So, Doctor, in your written testimony, you described how religion was used as a justification for the institution of slavery in our nation's history. Slavery, of course, sent a firm message that Black people were undeserving of rights and civil liberties. How does that history inform the discourse around LGBTQ discrimination today?
For me, I think it's a lesson to be learned. It's kind of the same, it's the same thing. It's saying that there are certain people that don't deserve rights and to be treated in the same way based on what we believe or what some people believe about faith and religion and God and who's created how and who is welcome and who deserves what. When I simply don't believe that that is how God sees us as children of God, that we are all loved, we are all created as children of God, and are all to be created equally. I've always been kind of amazed how we view giving rights to others means taking rights from others, as if there's a limited amount, when extending grace to one means extending grace to all. And I believe we can learn from that history, because oppression only oppresses us all. And we pay a price for that. And I believe that slavery has taught us that. And the price for what happens to people when you don't welcome them and accept them as who they are, the internal price that they pay and the price that we pay as society is simply too great. And the demeaning of people, eventually we pay for that, and not letting them and allowing them and affirming them in their fullness of their creation by God, and using the church and using religion to justify that. That's not religious freedom. That's using religion in a way that it's never been intended to be used. At least that's what I believe. And I believe that is true for all of the other faith communities that support the Equality Act. They do not see religion as a reason to be weaponized, to be used against people. And that's why they support it, as I do.
Thank you for your thoughtful testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Padilla. We'll do Senator Hawley on the Republican side, and then after a Democrat